Elsar here. In today's video, we're going to be dusting off a game that's not too old yet is still considered a titan of the gaming industry, From Software's 2022 release Elden Ring. When released in 2022, much of the same From Software dialogue came out concerning difficulty, along with new reflections about how open-world games are designed. As a longtime Souls fan, I think Elden Ring is a landmark in game design and immersive gameplay. As a topic, I think Elden Ring serves as a really modern and interesting way to discuss games. People feel strongly about Souls games in many different respects, and I think Elden Ring as a topic of conversation invites many different perspectives on difficulty, open world design, and how narrative and story are delivered. In this video, instead of covering Elden Ring beat to beat, I'll be touching on all three topics and exploring why Elden Ring excels in these areas and maybe how it doesn't. Buckle up because we are going to both piss people off and say exactly what they want to hear. To begin, I think the difficulty debate is an interesting one. It's filled with many who are arguing in very poor faith. I've heard the games are actually really easy, and I beat almost every boss first try. I've also heard these games are just trolling, they're literally impossible. Now, these are both annoying extremes, and yes, we shouldn't listen to them. However, I do think that despite some dishonesty, this range illustrates how differently we all absorb games. What might be easy to some is really difficult to others. While these games aren't that hard to me, I really struggle with rhythm games. You get the point. It's almost impossible to objectively gauge the difficulty of the Souls games, but I think I could probably get many to agree that they're harder than most, but not impossible. This then brings us to an important discussion often heard surrounding From Software games. Are these games hard enough to warrant an easy mode? Should something be done to make these games more accessible so that more people can enjoy them? Should every game provide an easy mode? My answer to these questions are somewhat mixed. I think many games could benefit from an easy mode, and like those asking for one suggest, it could provide a fun experience for more people. Most games already do have easy modes, and it doesn't necessarily take away. I can play through Oblivion on the lowest difficulty and run around one-shotting everything and still have a somewhat good time. From Software providing something like this, a menu toggle scaling player and enemy HP, would be an easy enough change to be made. However, I think those asking for this are ignoring what makes these games great, the immersive push and pull of Elden Ring's gameplay. Huge boss deaths would lose gratifications, player progression would be less meaningful, and the scary atmosphere of a dead world would lose its stakes. Those who would ask for an Elden Ring easy mode haven't often given a fair college try effort of trying to beat a Souls game. They often decided it wasn't for them in under 10 hours, something that is totally fine by me. But I think the game's design has simply filtered out players who aren't yet ready to approach the game on its own terms. If one isn't willing to brave a scary and dangerous world, they don't deserve the highs and thrills of overcoming it. What Elden Ring presents isn't really a power fantasy, at least not for a while. It's a fantasy of being the lowest of the low and climbing and growing until you have the power of a god. It presents a world where growth is earned, but every step of the way is an exciting trial waiting to be overcome. This is difficulty that is intentionally and masterfully designed. We've all played games that are intentionally really hard, and it usually comes off as rage bait. I still think there are a couple of moments in Dark Souls 2 that sometimes stray into this. However, Elden Ring and most From Software games thread the needle so well by providing a challenge that is well crafted and calibrated. The carrot to stick ratio is, for me, perfect. If future From Software games add easy modes, I don't think I'd be upset or worried about the franchise. I just think many would consume the games not fully understanding them. It would be offering a chicken nuggets and chocolate milk option for those unwilling to branch out and try something new. Is anything wrong with ordering this meal? I don't think I'd say so, either when I was 7 or now, but I do think those looking for such experiences are trying to force Elden Ring into being what it is not. This is a game where the difficulty is a defining factor, something that heightens and highlights the artistic elements that surround the world. One last note I'd add is that even for such players, numerous avenues still exist. Mods exist, and for console players, there's still an insane amount of broken builds to be exploited and step-by-step guides out there. There's many things you could do to make Elden Ring the level of difficulty that you're asking for, so while I get the request, if you're truly interested in the game, there are still many different ways to approach it still. Our next topic of discussion surrounds open world design, and this is a topic where I need to say I was completely wrong on. In the months before Elden Ring's release, I found myself questioning if I wanted a true open world Souls game. While the rest of the franchise was always fully open for you to explore, it was usually pretty linear all things considered. Pre-release and alpha footage usually showcased the character running up to an open world boss on Torrent and then remaining on the mount for the remainder of the fight. At the time, I thought this needlessly complicated design for a series that, in my eyes, already had so much going for it, was a mistake. I thought that the new format would take away from the carefully crafted churches and swamps of the Souls series, replacing these levels with the open world games that had flooded the market for the past decade and a half. When the game finally came out, I had found that From Software had put a lot more thought than me into what an open world Souls game could be. Instead of moving from level to level, unsure of the next threat around the corner, the choices the game forces you to make only heightened the gameplay tension of the series. In past games, if you ran into a tough new challenge, more often than not, you were in the right area and simply had to overcome this challenge to progress. In Elden Ring, you also have to choose where to explore next, and you could either find a somewhat tame side dungeon or a sprawling castle where enemies could dispatch you in only a couple hits. This then shifts the player's thinking. It makes your deaths and exploration even more meaningful. Now, if you're really struggling, it might be a good sign to either level up before pushing on or to pick a different direction and go. Whatever you find on the way will shift the story of your playthrough. You may find new NPCs and quest lines, new weapons, or the absolute hellhole of Caelid. When you finally reach or complete the game's next main objective, you'll usually be greeted with meaningful upgrades and resources along with confirmation that you've made definitive progress. What once seemed impossible has been conquered through hard lessons and dutiful exploration. Another avenue through which I enjoy Elden Ring's open world is simply having more content. Even if I had more or less unlocked the next main area of the game, there were still many fun secrets or dungeons for my character to explore. Even if I was now ready for the next new area and challenge, those leftover side dungeons were there to show that my adventuring was not for nothing. I had grown to the point where I could now explore with newfound confidence or try a new weapon I wasn't used to. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised with From Software's approach to open world, and it makes me really excited for whatever they make next. I'd be particularly interested in new modes of traversing any new open worlds that they create. No shade to one of the all-time video game horses in Torrent. The final topic I'd like to cover about Elden Ring would concern something that I see how the narrative of Elden Ring and other Souls games narratives are deployed. This is the one that fans might get mad at me for. For those who don't know, From Software games often present their stories in very fragmented ways. You often start the game with only the basic premise of what's happened to the world, and you're expected to string along what you learn from different NPCs as well as item descriptions. Every weapon, spell, or consumable that you pick up will have a scrap of knowledge, world building, or story. Now, conceptually, I find this super cool. Whoever endeavors to find out what Elden Ring's story is all about has to work for it, not unlike the main gameplay loop. The story of the world will not present itself to you, you must investigate and put together the pieces. While to some this may sound lazy, the story itself was a collaboration between Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin and From Software president Hidetaka Miyazaki. While I am not well versed in every aspect of the story, I've watched enough YouTube coverage to know that the main story is really cool and really in-depth, and something right up my alley as a fantasy story. As a big fan of A Song of Ice and Fire and some of the HBO shows, I find Martin's style perfectly at home with the worlds that Miyazaki and From have made, and I think this is a match made in heaven. Where I differ with many, however, is how this story is presented. As mentioned before, I think some of the best storytelling the game presents is through its immersive moment-to-moment gameplay. What the player thinks to do next, how the player understands the world they find themselves in, the wonderings of what went wrong, are really, really strong storytelling. However, for the main method of the story to be delivered through an entirely different way, I find to be a bit of a letdown. Where many throw up their hands and ask for an easy mode, I instead apply this to the game's more straightforward narrative and plot. I think by making these world-building tidbits and references a bit more accessible, more would be able to delight in the writing and layout of the world. Now yes, my same logic can be used against me, and in this case, I'd say it's valid. Just like the difficulty level, I'm complaining about the story not being handed to me in a game with an overlying theme that growth is earned. I will gladly concede that point and explore story summaries on YouTube. I will also, however, point out areas of the game with more direct story moments as some of the most cinematic and engaging. For example, let's take the Radahn Festival. When you approach the Radahn Festival, it's explained to you that the festival is all about trying to give an honorable warrior's end to a champion-driven mad. You see all manner of characters, knights, assassins, or cowards all there to rush and put down a diseased god. With this context, you rush into the fight being able to summon in all manner of warriors who contribute in their own ways, and also Patches who promptly flees. Even with all of the support, Radahn will probably give you a run for your money, doing crazy maneuvers like leaving the atmosphere and coming down as a comet. Knowing the context of such an event and rushing in with other festival goers is an amazing experience, and one where the immersive gameplay feeds off of the narrative. This is where I think a more straightforward narrative could shine in Souls games. Another aspect of Elden Ring's storytelling would be its quests. In most From games, NPCs can be found throughout the world, and if you follow along with them throughout the game, you can complete quests and get new items and information. Oftentimes, these quest lines can provide unclear information, and if not using any online resources, are extremely missable. In the times where I have endeavored to follow these quest lines, usually aided by online resources, I found nothing but really cool and amazing storytelling. The Ranni storyline and ending in Elden Ring is a great example of this, and Ranni will always be an icon of the game. However, I think many players could easily miss out unless they use online resources. Where gameplay difficulty can be overcome through perseverance and leveling, story beats and quest objectives, unless using resources, cannot. I think many Souls veterans would be hard-pressed to say that the quest lines are easy to follow without a guide. Mad respect to the YouTubers and Souls community who have pieced together and presented the stories of these games. There's truly some amazing and awe-inspiring story details. However, the format doesn't work the best for me, but that's okay. As we look to the future, Elden Ring's massive success is to me a wonderful thing and a sign of things to come. In an industry with immense open world fatigue, From Software continuing their open world design and immersive gameplay is really exciting. Opposed to dull or fatigued open worlds with checkboxes or little to do, we can head into whatever we see next from with great excitement. This channel will continue to cover video game content and discussion, so please take part in those discussions and let me know what you think in the comments below. Check out any of my other socials to chat with me or see whatever random crap I may be up to, and feel free to leave suggestions on any other video game topics you'd like to see covered. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'm out.